Today we honor, each and every day we honor Charles Barkley, don't we?
Pretty much.
Barkley going in on the jealousy and, well, just sheer jealousy of Caitlin Clark. We saw this in college basketball. Now we're seeing it in the WNBA.
Let me look at this camera right here, 83. You women out there, y'all petty, man. Hey, LeBron, you're 100% right on these girls hating on Caitlin Clark. Y'all petty, girls. I expect men to be petty because we're the most insecure group in the world.
Oh, you are.
Y'all should be thanking that girl for getting y'all ass private charters, all the money and visibility she bringing to the WNBA. Don't be petty like dudes. Listen, what she's accomplished, give her her flowers. Stop being petty, all you women out there. She got y'all ass charters. She bringing all y'all this money to the table, but y'all being petty like dudes. LeBron, you are 100% right. Y'all girls, stop being petty. Caitlin Clark, thank you for bringing all that money and shine to the WNBA.
Well, they're going to hate you even more now.
Hey, they can't do anything.
There you are from NBA Tip-Off on TNT through Awful Announcing. Chad, why do we always see when something goes right, the path, you have it's like you're going down the freeway, down the interstate, and you have the 18-wheeler that has the gravel path in case you lose your brakes.
Go up the hill?
In case you lose your brakes. I feel like that's what we're seeing right now in the WNBA with some in response to Caitlin Clark and popularity.
Yeah, and look, I agree with almost everything Charles Barkley said in that whole spiel about not being petty. The one thing I disagree with is that men are more petty than women. I disagree with that. I think women
in the NBA they
are far more petty than Michael Jordan's petty. But Michael Jordan is like woman-level petty. I know a lot of women, and they can be very, very petty and very, very jealous over things. So I think there's pettiness across both sexes. So the one thing I disagree with Charles Barkley on is that it's definitely men who are more petty, and the women in the WNBA need to stop being petty. But the broad strokes points here, yes, women across the WNBA need to shut up and stop talking about race and everything else being a factor and enjoy the charter flights they're getting to go on now, in large part because of Caitlin Clark. And they're all going to make more money if the ratings continue to tick up for the WNBA the way we've seen. Now, Charles Barkley said one thing. Jamel Hill said a very different thing to the Los Angeles Times, and I'm going to read you Jamel's quote. She said, and I quote, "We would all be very naive if we didn't say race and her sexuality played a role in her popularity. Why so many people are happy for Caitlin's success, including the players, this has had such an enormous impact on the game. There is a part of it that is a little problematic because of what it says about the worth and the marketability of the players who are already there." Now, this is going to stun this Outkick audience when I say this. Both Charles Barkley and Jamel Hill are right. They are completely correct. I am not going to say that Caitlin Clark being two things, white and straight, heterosexual, does not have an impact on her popularity and broadening the appeal of the WNBA. She's right in saying that. That is not an incorrect statement. Now, how much of an impact does that play? Are there people who only like Caitlin Clark or think she's good at basketball because she's white and straight? No, I do not think that at all. I think it's a small part of the story, but it is a part of this story. People also like Caitlin Clark and follow her because she broke Pistol Pete's all-time NCAA scoring record. And she's one of the most prolific scorers, the most prolific scorer we've ever seen in college, and there's a lot of appeal to that. Let's talk about appeal, and let's talk here about representation. Representation in media is something we hear a lot about. Television shows, movie, sports shows, you name it. There's been a cry for more representation of minority groups, races, religion, sexual orientation, whatever. And we've seen a ton more of that. And we've had a lot of firsthand accounts of people, not just in the last 10 or 20 years, but people going way back saying, boy, I got into acting or I got into this pursuit because I saw someone who looked like me that had a similar background to me on television doing that thing that I wanted to do. I've read accounts of of African Americans who went to med school and became a doctor because they watched Cliff Huxtable growing up. And Bill Cosby and thought, boy, if he can be a doctor and they can show an African American family that's affluent, living in New York City with a doctor and a lawyer, I should strive for those things too. And they talk about that. Representation is important, for sure. But what you have to understand when saying that, and this is where Jemele Hill is right, but where Jemele Hill misses the point totally, is that representation cuts both ways, okay? If you are a lesbian and you are playing basketball and you're watching the WNBA and you're saying, I am thrilled to be represented on the court in the WNBA, and I like seeing this because it's something I can strive to be, that's fine. I'm not going to get on here and crush you for taking that perspective. But if you see a lot of white, conservative, church-going America that also happens to be sports fans, but oh, by the way, never really were WNBA fans until now because they like Caitlin Clark and they follow her, that's representation cutting the other way. All right? It's not racist per se. It's people finding something in themselves that they see represented on the screen. They see represented in the sport. And that's what Caitlin Clark does represent to a lot of people. So I'm not going to sit here and call Jemele Hill an idiot on this one. She's pointing out a fact, and it is marketable, and it's marketable because it's brought a ton of eyeballs to the sport. And if we are to take out a Venn diagram of sports fans with people who go to church or white people in America, there's a lot of crossover there. And I know that diehard WNBA fans probably don't want to hear this, but this is just reality that I'm speaking right now. People that go to church and a lot of middle America, they're going to see Caitlin Clark, and they're going to see more with her maybe than some others. Okay? And that's reality. So where you can celebrate representation, others are allowed to celebrate representation when they see it also. I got in-laws in Nebraska who are farmers. They're into agriculture and farming. I'm not at all. They watch RFD TV. I didn't even know what the heck that was until I was in Nebraska. They watch that because they feel represented on those shows and they watch it. They're interested in that. I think we're seeing a lot with Caitlin Clark and the sudden influence and impact on WNBA games with ratings right now. And I'm just saying representation cuts both ways. And I think both Charles Barkley and Jemele Hill are actually kind of right with their points on this one.
Yeah, and the WNBA, just going back to charter flights, because that's been the real controversy with it. They're going to begin, well, they just started the charter service. They're investing, $50 million over the next 2 years for charter flights across the WNBA. The Minnesota Lynx and the Indiana Fever started this like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And on top of that, you have the Las Vegas Aces through their Convention and Visitors Bureau, it's paying $100,000 per player, regardless of if you're a starter or if you're a bench warmer, which is more or less NIL payments, right? And there's stirring up like markets and who can do what versus what should be collectively bargained to share across the league. So that is stirring up a lot of controversy, even though, Chad, I mean, from the outside looking in, regardless of who you are in the league, you should want the absolute most eyeballs on Caitlin Clark.
Yeah.
And yes, you should want her to fly charter. And yes, you should want to sit back and, I don't know, be like Chad and I flying in steerage, going to the Super Bowl. It's okay. Because eventually you're going to get what you've been clamoring for the last 2 or 3 years, which is, hey, we're tired of flying commercial. Brittany Griner deserves better. Everyone's clamoring for Brittany Griner to get a charter flight. But Caitlin Clark, all of a sudden, is an issue. Not the issue. She's the solution. She's going to raise the prices. The owners are going to spend more as a league. And you're going to have more eyeballs, which means more revenue poured in to the new TV rights deals. Everyone's going to win, including the last woman on the bench. There's only one way this can go, and that's up, as long as everyone buys into Caitlin Clark. So I understand what Barkley's saying from the pettiness aspect. Let the superstars receive the superstar treatment.
Yeah.
And now you have the superstars that will be lifted. The rising tide lifts all ships. That's what's going to happen here because there's going to be more eyeballs on everyone because of Caitlin Clark. That's kind of a no-brainer from the business model. And the WNBA is doing the right thing. The NFA doing the right thing of providing the charters to and from the jump.
Yeah,
she could have stayed in college, by the way.
Just enjoy the benefits you're going to get of Caitlin Clark in your league. Angel Reese, and I'm not saying she didn't earn this on her own, too, with her great play, but she's benefited from the rivalry with Caitlin Clark, with endorsements in NIL while she was at LSU. She'll continue to do so. So I'd say for every other WNBA player, if you just enjoy the benefits of more people watching your sport, and if you are sold on your level of play and the work you've done to make it an enjoyable product to watch on the court, then people are going to see that and keep watching, and you're going to get the benefits of it now. You should be thanking Caitlin Clark and not bitching about it, quite frankly. I totally agree with Charles Barkley on this. And I also think that when you dive heavy into politics, social politics or others, and the WNBA is guilty of this, you're going to turn off a lot of people. You're going to turn on some people too. But whoever you turned on to watching the WNBA did not work out in your favor because the ratings have been god-awful for years. So I'll say this also. Don't make the same mistake that the NFL didn't make or almost made with Colin Kaepernick. Mm-hmm. I mean, don't kid yourself. The NFL, they don't care about who you vote for. They don't care about if you support Donald Trump or Joe Biden or RFK Jr. or whoever. They care about you affecting their bottom line. And when fans of the sport started to look at it and say, boy, this is not my politics they're representing. They're getting way too controversial with this. And then they stopped actually going to games or stopped watching on Sundays. The NFL took notice, and they did something about it. To my knowledge, Caitlin Clark is not an overly political person. She has not been very divisive throughout her career.
Let me. Have you
seen? I don't think that's an issue with her.
The Indiana Fever come out and they're doing their pregame. I guess it's more or less a pump up, trying to get ready to run out of the court.
Yeah,
they're getting the circle, and they're clapping, they're dancing, they're doing all these things in unison, except for Caitlin Clark, who's just walking out, just stone face. Focus is how I would describe the look. Not involved in any of that. There is the separation of individual versus team in that aspect. You can see it. Everyone can see it. How long does that go on before there's some issue?
Well, again, what I'm saying is I don't think that Caitlin Clark has been making any outrageous political statements to make her divisive. Jamel Hill makes a point about Coke and Pepsi didn't sponsor Cheryl Miller. Okay? Well, Caitlin Clark is Coke and Pepsi right now. She can be sold to the masses. And I mean the masses. And that's what she's done throughout her career.
Caitlin Clark is the WNBA.
Yes.
Caitlin Clark was women's college basketball.
And that's not a racial statement. There are plenty of black entertainers or athletes I can point to that are Coke and Pepsi. Michael Jordan is the greatest example of Coke and Pepsi. The guy, you could sell Michael Jordan to America. You could sell Michael Jordan to a farm household in Iowa or an inner city household in Brooklyn. Did not matter.
No.
You could sell Michael Jordan to people. Caitlin Clark is the same. Caitlin Clark has just opened a door of representation to a different group of Americans that otherwise, quite frankly, would not pay a second of attention to the WNBA product. That is now paying attention to it. That's a good thing for the league. Let's not lose sight of that.
Here could also be a good thing for the league. The heel could come out of this. You could have the Angel Reese version of the WNBA come out of this against Caitlin Clark. That helped the brand of women's college basketball, that the controversy, the trash talk, the social media buzz, that helped that certainly helped the eyeballs on Caitlin Clark. It helped Angel Reese as well, and it helped the numbers for the networks. That's the aspect that is missing right now that everyone tuned in for moving forward with Angel Reese, Caitlin Clark, LSU winning the championship, and then Caitlin Clark coming back, going through LSU to get to the Final Four, and then ultimately beating two good programs, and you end up seeing the the championship with South Carolina. Chad, there could be some good in this if everyone plays into it enough, but it doesn't have all of us just tuned out because it's the same old thing over and over, and it doesn't have to be about race. It can be about a charter flight. It really can. You can manufacture that. You can lock down the best player, the highest scoring player in college basketball, and talk trash that way too, and have something that's organic work into your favor.
Well, and if you're looking for that heel to Caitlin Clark, I think Asia Wilson is where you look. She's the one that's been outspoken from the Las Vegas Aces about race being the biggest part and how disappointed she is that the league couldn't get any sponsorship or more eyeballs before she got there. So that could be the heel to Caitlin Clark, but that's not going to be the heel to everybody, right? I'm going back to representation here. That's going to be the hero to a lot of people too in this story, and that's sports.
So Chelsea Gray, was Chelsea Gray the player who got into it with Clay and he offered $1 million to play with his high school choice?
I don't know. I don't remember the.
Davey, do a quick search here.
I know the story, but I don't remember who it was.
Chelsea Gray plays for the Las Vegas Aces. And, of course, they're getting $100,000 through the city of Las Vegas. It was her. It was Chelsea Gray. They're under investigation for this $100,000 payment for everyone on the team through the city, okay? She tweets out, under investigation is crazy, right? Because they're investigating this, but some players are getting charter flights, okay? Here's the response, and I sent this to Clay just now. From on social, a guy named Coach Kiwi. Chad, I sent this in a text to you as well. Under investigation is crazy. And a response to Chelsea Gray was, not really. You had the chance to earn money off approximately the same amount if you had accepted Clay Travis's offer of playing and beating the high school boys for $1 million. But the players declined and wouldn't respond. That was a chance to earn the money instead of getting it for free. That's
well said.
Now, we'll see. I said it to Clay, see if he's interested in it. But the response from Chelsea Gray was, move along, sir, to this person. This is where it's going to get twisted. Because the Chelsea Gray or those that are responding and saying, like, we're under investigation, but the charters are out, you have to at least support the charter flights. If you're supporting the charter flights for Brittany Griner last season. You have to, because it's going to help everyone across the league, and it helped in this case because now they're all getting the charter flights. How can you complain about that? You don't have to bow down to Caitlin Clark, but you certainly shouldn't be jealous of what she's bringing to the league, because otherwise it would just be status quo. You'd be in on the NBA negotiation of rights right now instead of forging your own path. Pretty simple, isn't it?
It seems that way to me. I don't understand, and maybe the hate's a little bit overblown for Caitlin Clark, but I don't get it. I think what LeBron James said is correct. I think what Charles Barkley said is correct. I think a little bit of what Jamel Hill said is correct. We can all acknowledge it. Doesn't mean that everybody that's now rooting on Caitlin Clark is a racist, but that's just reality with representation in America.
So I think this is really what they should do. That 3-point contest that they had at the NBA All-Star Game, they should invite NBA players to their All-Star weekend. And you do it there.
Oh, have a 3-point shootout?
You have UNESCO there. You have your top stars there against Steph. You bring the eyeballs in through the celebrity status of the individual players in the NBA. The same petty players that Barkley's alluding to there.
I don't think the NBA players would do that.
Oh, it depends.
Unless they were demanded, that they were made to do it by the NBA.
Or their sponsorships, their shoe companies.
Management, agents, maybe put them in touch and they do it that way. Possibly.
Yeah, with the eyeballs on Caitlin Clark, getting 2 million viewers for their draft, you know?
Well, they had her fifth regular season game drew 1.7 million.
Who's doing
they're still getting good numbers on. They're 0-5, and she's drawing over 1 million a game, over 1.5.
Who's funding the show for following the season of Caitlin Clark?
Well, that was last year, so that they're just now airing it. But it was her at Iowa.
But
it's Peyton Manning. It's Omaha Productions that did it.
So,
But I mean, it's ESPN airing it, so ESPN.
LeBron's production company should
is funding
absolutely
it.
be looking into something like that too. You know, you see what I'm saying?
If you're going to buy stock in the WNBA.
Yes.
And you should have done it before Caitlin Clark got there. I don't know how much longer I would give you the advice to continue to buy stock in it, but it is definitely on its way up right now.
What about inside the NBA? It's on its way up, I believe. But the question
Up
is,
in flames?
no,
Or
well,
up in
inside the
stock
NBA on
price?
TNT's up in flames. That show itself is not going to be up in flames.
Now, this new contract with NBC will not start until after next year, right? So we're going to have a lame
2025.
duck year of Turner Sports and inside the NBA.
Yeah, but
Theoretically.
yes, but that's still the show. I mean,
Yeah.
I react more to that show than I do the actual product.
I say that to tease how impactful it is what Charles Barkley is saying right now about his bosses.
Okay, well, here is Barkley last week discussing the future of Inside the NBA with ESPN 1100 in Chicago.
Am I concerned? 100%.
What can you tell us about the future of Inside the NBA and what direction you think it's all headed?
We have zero idea what's going to happen. We might lose it. I feel so bad for the people I work with. I mean, it is brutal. I mean, it is flat out brutal. Everybody's scared to death. But this is the first time during the exclusive window we did not re-sign in advance. So I will tell you this, it's very stressful for the people I work with. And I wish I could give you an answer. We might lose it. I don't know. It's 50-50 that we lose our part to NBC. Am I concerned? 100%. Because as much as we have been partners with the NBA for, I think, 40 years, you would think if it was close in a bidding war, we would get the benefit of the doubt. But clearly that's not happening. So to answer your question, they're scared to death over here right now. I feel so bad for the people I work with.
That was last week, and here he is recently with an all-time quote. Richard Deitch points this out.
Vintage Chuck on this one.
So he owns his own production company. Says he has discussed the possibility of just taking the show to his own production company. The quote was, "I would love to do that if we lose it. Somebody suggested that to me, to be honest with you, on the internet. I'm like, that's a great idea, but we're just sitting back waiting on these people to figure out what they're going to do. My two favorite wines are Inglenook and Opus. And these clowns I work for, they've turned us into Ripple and Boone's Farm and Thunderbird. We've got the best studio show. It's so funny. We just won the Sports Emmys Best Studio Show, and these fools turned us from Inglenook and Opus into damn Boone's Farm and Ripple. It's crazy."
Now, I've heard of Boone's Farm and Ripple. I've never heard of Thunderbird. So that's a new cheap wine that I just learned about with Charles Barkley. Amazing quote from him. But again, this is the era where major talent just feels free to just fire shots at executives and their bosses if they feel they're not doing right. And Charles Barkley's the latest example. We've seen Pat McAfee do it time and time again. This was just unspoken stuff for years and years. No matter how big you were within a network, if you're asked about an executive, you spoke glowingly of that executive or you did not speak. Those were your two options. And now Charles Barkley is just calling it the way he sees it, that his bosses have bungled this whole operation. And because of that, Turner Sports is likely losing the NBA. And I get it. He's protecting his team that works with him every night on Inside the NBA and across the coverage of the league, saying there's a lot of people here that are going to be out of a job because of this maneuver.
But they'll be able to – they're out of a job. But, Chad, they're coming with them. You can tell – maybe not everyone, but you can tell Underdog and others will be there just based on how they interact with the show. You know, like the camaraderie that entire group has. It's the best studio show in sports, period. And because of that, so NBC Universal, you have – so they are going to have so what NBC is thinking about doing and what I believe is the plan is after football season, NBC will have a Sunday night basketball game of the week instead of the Sunday night football game of the week. They will have that primetime slot, and you will have either ESPN or Amazon gets Saturday.
So after football season, they'll go from NFL Sunday night to NBA Sunday night.
Starting in January, which is really where you and I say the NBA season really tips off, right? Amazon would get the in-season tournament. You have NBC that would effectively take over the TNT portion of the playoffs. You know, they go through the conference finals, and then they're done. And ESPN ABC keeps the NBA finals. It was reported that Adam Silver wanted a split, much like we see with the Final Four in men's college basketball. Adam Silver wanted a split between NBC and ESPN ABC of the finals, and ESPN wanted nothing to do with that. They keep the exclusive rights of the best games. They'll still be all in, and you still have certain pockets of coverage for Amazon. They'll get like a Tuesday night or maybe a different night of the week, and you'll have like NBC with the ability to put some games during the week on Peacock or whatever they would like to. And I'm here to tell you, Chad, with the ability of what's been reported, that if this goes down and there's no more inside the NBA, the contracts are just null and void. And Barkley and company, they're going to make a ton of money based on exactly what he said. He's the opus. They're the opus. And it's not just Barkley, by the way. Ask CNN, right? It's Barkley and that group. It's the nucleus of
Barkley and Gayle King didn't work out, so it's not Barkley with just anyone.
It's not just what he's saying, it's who he's saying it to and who he's saying it with, and the reaction to it and how they'll call it out. The reaction to Kenny Smith last night by Barkley.
Oh, so funny.
You know, like that's just in the moment, and he's doing it with Kenny Smith. He's not doing it with Gayle King.
It's like the vibe is a constant roast. You know, anything is on the table.
Right.
Everything's on the menu. You can say whatever you want to your friend, your buddy, and it's not going to get too out of hand, but they can go at it on air because they know each other well enough. And just like last night, watching Kenny Smith go on his big diatribe about what the NBA needs, the future of the league, and then Charles Barkley
face of the league is coming out of the series in the Western Conference.
That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard, is the first response from Charles Barkley. Was great, and that's what the show has and what it needs to continue. I will say, like, it seems easy, and I think it will be, for someone to bid for this.
Amazon.
And to make sure it happens. They're not going to want to – I think they're going to want to stay in Atlanta. So, like, there's going to need to be a production studio, something. Again, that's small time based on the money we're talking about with the companies. Sure. But I feel like they have the perfect setup right now because they all live in that city and they don't want to move. And where they can just drive into work every day and do it at night, like, they're going to need to replicate that. And I'm with you. I think that someone's going to figure it out.
Or Barkley just does it.
They'd be very dumb not to.
Or Barkley does it through his production company that he owns, and then you pay for the rights of the broadcast based on what's set up there already. I'm just saying, like, they're not going to be unavailable to us.
What I think would be pretty awesome, and I don't know that this has ever really happened before, but if Charles Barkley with his production company produced inside the NBA, and then instead of just having these other stupid studio shows that no one watches or really likes, if they could all just license it, and everyone that has the NBA could just air inside the NBA, and they basically pay for it through Charles Barkley's production company. See what I'm saying?
That's what I'm saying.
They're a third-party contractor, but he's going to be on every network that way.
But he could do that, or I'm saying just he could produce it through his company in Atlanta. That's what I'm saying. And then you just have the Amazons or
but I'm saying
more or less
all
the
of
McAfee
them.
model.
Yeah, it's not just like you're working for one network.
Well, but
everyone agrees there's no competition, so after our game, whenever we air it, we're going to have Inside the NBA. And it's going to be a Charles Barkley produced deal.
But Barkley doesn't want to do a daily thing.
Right.
And if you have all the networks, that's ultimately all week. Because Dan Patrick told him that they were talking. Dan Patrick told this story that Barkley, when his last contract was up, asked Dan about ESPN because ESPN was going at him hard. And Dan told him, he's like, well, it just depends on what you want to do, Charles. If you want to go through the car wash, if you want to fly to Bristol, and you want to stay in Bristol on a Sunday night or whatever and get ready for Monday through Wednesday, if you want to do ESPN radio and you want to go do First Take, and then you're going to go do Get Up, and then you're going to move and do something with Scott Van Pelt the next night. And if you want to do the car wash, that's what you're going to do there.
Yeah.
And if you like doing what you're doing, even if it's a little bit less, maybe it's right at the same mark, but you want more exposure. You've always wanted to do the ESPN model, but you don't want to do all, then you need to stay where you are. Guess what he did? He stayed where he was because he doesn't want to do the daily deal.
I think he wants to do exactly what he wants to do.
And we're seeing it.
That's what he gets to do right now.
But instead, he's turned Opus into, what was it? What's the name of it?
Boone's
Ripple?
Farm and Ripple.
The one we haven't heard of?
Thunderbird?
Thunderbird.
That's one that I've never.
It's like, and no, look,
Thunderbird.
I go to Walmart.
Anybody in
every
the
now
studio
and
ever had Thunderbird? Know that? Oh,
then. What's it like?
of course. Our guy Colin
Thunderbird.
just smiling and nodding
Is
like
it
an
the Natty
evil
Light
genius.
of wine?
Is it a fruit wine? Okay. Yeah, I remember Mad Dog 2020. Did you ever play Edward 40 Hands in college, Hutton?
I did, but I did
feel
it
like some Thunderbird could be taped to your hands if you played that
we did
game.
it, but we did it with Colt 45s.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you can get a 40 of Boone's Farms too. You can get those in 40 ounces as well.
What he's saying is,
Colin, we can confirm.
when you walk into Walmart,
Can confirm you can get Boone's Farm and Thunderbird in 40s.
here's what Charles is saying: when you walk into Walmart and you see Camus on the shelf, it just doesn't hit you the same way,
Yeah.
right? Just doesn't feel the same as walking into a liquor store and Camus is on the top shelf.
I never thought of Chuck as a big wine guy either until now. I love how he can immediately go to his two favorite wines.
Yeah,
You
know
think
what?
he's like a
What
Wine
did you think he
Spectator
was?
magazine
What did you
subscriber?
bourbon? What do you think he sips on?
I
he
see
sips
him
on
as
wine.
Michael. Remember Michael Jordan sipping his own tequila brand in The Last Dance throughout the whole thing?
Yes.
I see him as a tequila, vodka, clear liquor type guy, but mainly tequila. I'd see Chuck as a tequila guy.
And then there's a joke there from Shaq.
Tequila, then bourbon, I would say. If I had to do the
To
power
Chuck.
ranking of what Chuck drinks, it would be tequila, bourbon,
Remember-
beer, vodka, wine. Wine would be way down the list. Way down the list.
Remember the training camp here in Nashville. Lindell White was here through, I think it was his second year. He came in, he was Lindell White, the big dude, overweight.
A lot of Lindell is a whale jokes during that time.
The next off season, he comes back in for camp and he's dropped some pounds. And we're there chatting with him. I'm like, man, you hit the gym, like you really dedicated to something. He's like, no, I just stopped drinking tequila.
Yeah.
Just cut out tequila.
Not stop drinking. He was like, oh, no. I'll still be drinking.
I'll be drinking.
I'm just not drinking tequila anymore. I just cut that out.
Yes.
It's a great line.
We've got
And it
Armando
worked.
Salguero coming up. So the Louisville Police Department, Louisville Mayor, and others, their charges will remain against Scotty Scheffler for last week's incident that took place in the early morning hours as police officers and detectives were investigating and securing the scene for a traffic casualty right at the entrance of Gate 1 at Valhalla, where we know Scheffler tries to enter. You have Detective Brian Gillis, who grabs hold of the car and suffers some injuries. There's a Class C felony that's a part of these 4 charges that will remain for Scotty Scheffler. Here is video released, or excuse me, let's start with the audio. Here's Mayor Craig Greenberg earlier today discussing how we had the 2 branches on the Louisville Police Department tree colliding at the same time. You have a group that's there to secure the scene of a casualty fatality from a traffic incident, and you also have security and authorities on hand to get players through the gates at Valhalla.
Last Friday morning, our community suffered the tragic death, loss of Mr. Mills just after 5 a.m. in the morning. That tragic death led to a series of very unfortunate events in dark, rainy, and tense conditions. Transparency is incredibly important to our administration, to LMPD, to our community. Given the importance of transparency, we're releasing some information and some video today, as we committed to, following the tragic events and series of events that happened thereafter. To restate what we've already said, we are not aware at this time of any video footage which captures the initial interaction between LMPD and Mr. Scheffler. We are releasing today video footage at the time of Mr. Scheffler's arrest from 2 video cameras. One of those video cameras is a fixed pole camera that was from the other side of Shelbyville Road, and the other camera is from the dash cam of a police car. At the request of the county attorney's office, any additional video or evidence related to this case will not be released until the conclusion of the legal process.
So we'll see that at the end of the legal process. Here is the chief of police, Jacqueline Gwynn Villaroel, discussing the fact that there is no body cam footage, which is a violation of the police department policy for Brian Gillis, the detective involved in this, and, well, what's to come from this investigation.
Detective Gillis did not have his body-worn camera operationally ready as required by our policy. He was performing a law enforcement action as defined in our policy. Further, in section 4.31.7 states, members will maintain their BWC in a constant state of operational readiness. Detective Gillis was counseled by his supervisor. We understand the seriousness of the failure to capture this interaction, which is why our officer has received corrective action for this policy violation. This corrective action has been notated on a performance observation form, which is in line with our disciplinary protocol and practices. We respect the judicial process, and we will allow the courts to proceed accordingly.
So, with this, more video was released, different security cameras and more. And we'll see the video cut to a different angle here, and you will see Detective Brian Gillis go after the car, and Scotty Scheffler
latch on to the driver's side door.
Right. And try to get him to stop, which he complies. And you see him get pushed up against the car here. And again, this is around 6 a.m. in Louisville at Valhalla. Here he is being walked to the car. We saw the other angle from Jeff Darlington, who was on the scene. This is the only video we'd seen prior to this being released. Again, no body cam footage. And we'll see a zoomed-in video in just a moment of what took place with the car here in a second. But, Chad, where I come down on this, they're making the right call. And here's why. You don't have the body cam footage. He's in violation of this. But you have a detective who is putting this in a police report of what went down. And you have a star athlete in Scotty Scheffler. And you have the major, everything's going on with the PGA Championship. And in Louisville, if you had the mayor and the chief of police and the city government simply say, you know what, we're just going to drop charges here. We're just going to bypass this police report. How does that go over with your police department, truly? If you're in the moment reacting to something and a week later, charges drop, press conference, you know what, we're just going to move on. The right thing to do is just let the legal process play out. Let someone else determine that there's no evidence here of any wrongdoing. It was a misunderstanding, whatever. But it's not going to come from the chief of police. It's not going to come from the mayor's office, where in a day and age where you want to back the blue, they're doing that, and I don't disagree with it, even if I think this dude overreacted. Because you're trusting what happened in the moment. You don't have the body cam footage to truly support either side. And I don't know, sitting here in Nashville, Tennessee, what the hell happened prior to him chasing after the car. So because of that, I'll respect the legal process instead of just saying, you know what, Scotty Scheffler's cool. He's a really nice guy. Let's move on. I don't think that Brian Gillis did everything in the proper fashion here. I do think in the moment, and I don't know what stress levels are going on with the fatality that happened right across the street or on the street right in front of the entrance. Chad, I'm just saying, I don't think, just from what I know, Scheffler did anything to just ignore what Detective Gillis was trying to do, based on other reports that there's security ahead of him waving him on. But I hear him to say, like, if I'm in city government, I absolutely want the police department and law enforcement knowing that if you file something and you are saying this guy was in the wrong, here's 4 charges, I'm going to support that until the legal process plays itself out and they determine, no, you know what, there's nothing to this, and we can say that there are no charges. And by the way, let me just double check this before I set this up. We do have the attorney video. So here's the attorney for Scottie Scheffler, Stephen Romanes, and he's responding to the presser that we've just played clips to.
It won't impact my case at all. Our position's the same as it was last Friday. Scottie Scheffler didn't do anything wrong. We're not interested in settling the case. We will either try it or it'll be dismissed. It's very simple. All the evidence that continues to come out just continues to support what Scottie said all along, that this was a chaotic situation and a miscommunication, and he didn't do anything wrong.
I totally agree with what the lawyer's saying, but the judge can dismiss the case. And I think that's all that the city government and that the chief of police is saying here. And I don't think they're saying that Scottie did anything wrong. They're just backing their guy, even if their guy didn't follow the complete protocol. And I don't mind that.
I think it's very well said, Hutton. And from what I've seen, it does look like an overreaction. But it's also understandable as to why a police force and a police chief would want to just go ahead and go through with the legal process, especially if they believe their officer is a good officer who may have had a bad moment or whatever. But it's going to get here's what I also believe in all this. Scottie Scheffler's not going to get convicted of a felony.
No.
When this is all said and done. And that's what his legal team is saying, that it's either going to get dismissed or we're going to go to court, and we're happy to fight it and go from there. And if that happens, I don't think Scottie Scheffler's getting convicted of anything. So both things are true in this one, and I can understand the city of Louisville stance on it and the Louisville Police Department stance.
And what we also don't know, how many other cases that have been there are families that say, wipe your hands of this, drop these charges, and they don't. You don't do this either. Just let the legal process play out, just like you should in most cases.